Let's talk Beyond the Gates for today, February 9th, 2026. So today we start the day at Danny and Andre's house. Danny comes in and she's like, "Good morning," and they have a little playful banter back and forth. And he asks her where she is about making her decision. And they continue to go back and forth, and then they start kissing because that's what Danny and Andre do best. And they're getting pretty hot and heavy, and then Pamela ends up at the back door, and they let her in, and she's like the fashion designer that Andre was just asking her about. She's coming in order to have a meeting with Danny like soon. So she tells them, go get dressed. So that's what they do. They go get dressed, and then while Danny is putting the finishing touches on, Tatum, that's her name. Tatum arrives, and she's talking to Pamela, and she's talking to Andre, and they're chatting it up, and she is talking about Pamela's purple aura and all of this. And then Danny comes into the room bringing all of her Danniness, and they have the meeting. The meeting goes well. She asks her, does she have a spokes model? I don't think we learned what Danny's answer is. The next scene that we saw, Danny and um, Tatum were at the counter chatting away, and then Andre is sitting on the sofa talking to Pamela, and in comes a call from Bill, which Andre sends to voicemail. And Pamela sees him send it to voicemail, and she's like, basically like, good call. Down at the country club, Chelsea Chelsea is there with Madison having breakfast. She's trying to reach her mother so that she can tell Danny about her engagement, but Danny isn't answering the phone. And then Bill arrives with Caroline because they're having their morning meeting, I guess, there at the country club. And they have their little boss employee banter going back and forth. And Bill looks across the room and he sees Chelsea and Madison there because the last time that he knew that they were possibly on the outs. So he goes over there and says good morning to them, and it's good to see them together. And then they tell Bill that they're engaged, and Bill is a little kind of weary. Caroline is all excited. Madison gets a call and excuses herself from the table to go take the call. And then Caroline excuses herself to go clean up because she was teary eyed. And so he's talking to Chelsea, and Chelsea's like, "So, no congratulations from you?" And he was like, "Well, y'all were just fighting. I don't want you to make a rash decision." And, Chelsea is getting snippy right back at her father. And, um, you know, when Madison comes back, she asked Madison if she had told her mom, and she was like, "No, my mom probably likes you more than she likes me at this point, but I don't want to, deal with my mom trying to plan a wedding, whatever the case may be." And Chelsea tells Madison about what her dad said, and they decide that they're not rushing into anything. They have decided to go with it. And yeah, so then across the room, Bill shares his reservations with Caroline, and Caroline is like, "Bro, like, chill out," basically. And then she's like, "And don't you do what I think you're gonna do," because she can read Bill like a book, and automatically he starts calling Danny, which is the call that we see that Andre sends to voicemail. Meanwhile, down at the hospital, Shanice and Ashley are talking about Grayson, and Shanice asks her, "You think he's sketchy?" And then she asks Shanice, "Have you been talking to um Derek, and Shanice is like, I think that he's coming from a genuine place of concern. But Ashley is like, well, how would you feel if your ex had something to say about your new relationship? And then Shanice is like, I get it. And then Ashley tells Shanice about what happened. And then Shanice was like, well, maybe what Derek is saying, you should listen to, me. And then she says, she did the same thing where she tried to ignore something that she saw with Ted, and that it was bad of her to ignore it. And then she addressed it. She doesn't know, what effect it may have on the relationship, but she doesn't regret addressing it with Ted. And then Grayson comes off the elevator, and then Ashley goes to talk to him about what happened. And then he comes up with some sad sob story about his mom having Parkinson's and him having to try and financially support her, which I think is 100% lie, or it may be true, but what he's up to is still sketchy. Meanwhile, Jan and Derek meet at Orphe Jeans, and Jan also has Leslie come over, and she's trying to mediate between the two of them because she thinks that Derek would be a perfect fit to work at the clinic that Leslie is opening. As Leslie is no more excited to work with Derek than Derek is to work with Leslie, but um Jan says that Derek will think about it, and Leslie leaves. Leslie then leaves to go and talk to Shanice and make fun of her about leaving the panties in Ted's hotel room, and I need that man to get a house ASAP. But she goes to talk to him about talk to Shanice, and she's like poking and prodding at Shanice, and they have this little back and forth exchange where Shanice tries to tell Leslie that she's not threatened by Leslie and that Ted doesn't want her, and Leslie is inserting the fact that he does want me and he is definitely going to be with me. It's just so weird, and I don't know. And I in a way I understand not letting Leslie like interfere in what you may be trying to have with Ted, but at the same time, for me personally, it wouldn't be whatever me and Ted might have isn't worth dealing with her. Like, I would rather bow out and go on about my business because I don't do the drama. But we have yet to see which way Shanice is going to go with this. Then we have at Uptown, we have Haley. So no Dupree was on except for Danny today. But anyway, back at Uptown, we have we have Haley having drinks with Lynette, and she's, talking about how how Danny is an issue between her and Bill. And then Lynette is like, well, you need to try this, 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 and this. And Haley is basically like, I've tried it all and it's still an issue. And then they start talking about a time when they were kids and how, she had got hurt. So her mom forgot all about the fact that she was late for curfew and all of this. So we need to get a distraction for Bill, so they need to stage a mugging. And she was like, no, because his son-in-law is the police, and he is, but Jacob ain't got time to be worrying about who attacked Haley because he undercover. But she was like, he got a son-in-law that's police, he's gonna check every camera, such and such. So Lynette is looking around and she's like, ain't no cameras here, and she punches Haley in the face so that she can bruise Haley and she can have a cover up story. I mean, the story about the mugging. But I don't know if that's going to work. This is crazy. Let me know what you thought about today's episode. And I will be back tomorrow to discuss what happens next. Bye. Let's talk Beyond the Gates for today, February the 10th, 2026. Okay, so today we have Bill and Jacob. They're meeting at Orphe Jeans and they're talking about this private investigation that they have going on. And June overhears their conversation. Well, she doesn't really hear the conversation, but she knows that they're having a secretive conversation and they try to play it off. But she's like, okay, so what were y'all talking about? And of course, they both say something different. Um, and then she says, oh, I thought you were talking about the enforcer, which is the ringleader for the undercover situation that Jacob's on. And when Jacob leaves, Smitty kind of asks her questions about the enforcer since she mentioned him. And she's like, yeah, you need to stay out of this, trying to give them a warning. Somebody is going to get hurt in this situation. And I'm wondering if it's going to be Jacob or it's going to be Smitty. But someone's definitely getting hurt. Then we have Naomi and Ashley. They're sitting, catching up. I know Naomi is a lawyer and that she has a job. She has her own firm. But like, does she have an actual brick and mortar firm? Because she's never at the office. She's always at some weird place doing work. Either at Orphe Jeans or at the hospital. It's so weird. But anyway, she's there and she's chatting with Ashley, and Ashley is kind of pressing her about telling her family about her having the BRCA gene, and she again refuses, and they're going back and forth, and as friends do. And while they're talking, here comes Haley and Lynette putting on Academy Award winning performance about Haley getting mugged, and Ashley, does Haley's intake because Haley can't walk because she got punched in the face. Um and so they're there, and Naomi starts, questioning Lynette, and she finds out that she's a client of her dad's, and Tomas is handling her case. And she sees that her hand is hurt, and she's like, did you hurt yourself helping Haley? And then she goes in and she checks on Haley, and it's just so weird. Haley tries to call Bill when they get to the hospital. However, Haley, Haley's call gets sent to voicemail by Bill. Then we have Chelsea and Madison. They show up at the Grands, and it's obvious that Madison needs to tell Chelsea something. However, Chelsea won't let Madison get a word in edgewise, so they end up telling the Grands that they're engaged, and the Grands are all congratulatory and everything. And they tell the Grands that Madison is going away for a year to Denmark to do research, and they're all excited. And then, again, Chelsea is taking over the conversation and not letting Madison get anything in. So then Madison is forced to blurt out, look, I'm not going to Denmark. And the Grands excuse themselves to let them have a private conversation because we ain't trying to be in these people business. And they leave, and they are talking, and Chelsea, and we see throughout the episode Chelsea is trying to make sure this is what Madison wants, and that Madison's not doing what she thinks she wants, because she totally supports Madison doing what she has to do, and she's willing, to go back and forth seeing her, and that they can make the long distance work. But Madison is determined that this is what she wants to do. I saw a synopsis from one of the episodes to come this week where it says that Chelsea is worried that the Hamilton pattern is being continued. And I think they're talking about, how Danny gave up modeling for Bill. And she thinks that that Madison is doing the same thing for her. And I guess she doesn't want that. Meanwhile, Danny, Andre, and Pamela are at Danny's house, and the Tatum has left, and they're discussing, what Danny thinks and what was her decision. Danny says that she thinks that she needs a night to sleep on it, and Pamela is like, absolutely not. And so she pulls their leg a little bit. Then she says that, yeah, she wants to go for it. And they're all happy and celebratory. And then Danny was like, slow your roll. And Pamela was like, no, because you're not changing your mind. And she leaves and said, next time y'all see me, I'll be Stevie Wonder. And he said, Stevie Wonder. She said, I had a deal signed, sealed, and delivered. I said, I know that's right, Pam. But she leaves and she goes to get everything in a row. And Danny and Andre about to do what Danny and Andre do both best and go celebrate. However, there's a knock at the door. Andre sends Danny upstairs and says he'll get rid of whoever is at the door. And he goes to the door and it's Bill. And he's like, oh, hell no. And he answers the door. He was like, Chelsea's studio is that way. And they have a little back and forth, and Bill is like, oh, I'm coming to see my wife. Boy, she is not your wife. You have a wife, her name is Haley. And he's like, my wife is unavailable. And they're going back and forth, and then Danny hears the raised voices, so she comes down and is like, what is going on? And she sees Bill is at the door, and he's acting like it's something urgent. And so she lets him in. And Andre said this is house, he ain't going nowhere, basically, because he was going to be part of this conversation because he's her husband. And Bill tells about Chelsea being engaged and going to Denmark. And Danny is excited, like I knew she would be. And he's like, you got to talk some sense into her. Don't let her make the same mistakes that you're making. And then he gets the call from about about Haley again, and then he leaves. And Danny is talking to Andre. It was like he looked a little shaky, and Andre is like, he's a grown man. He can get himself to the hospital or get him an Uber. And so she was all excited about the girls, and she's saying she can pretend to be surprised. So as soon as Madison and Chelsea walk into the house, she's like up on her feet bouncing, like she's excited. You obviously know she already knows, but they tell her and she's excited. And she's like, is there anything else you want to tell me? And she's like what? And she's like, about Denmark. And then she was like, who told you? And then she tells her that Bill tells them, and they get champagne and toast, and they're all excited. Meanwhile, Bill is on his way to the hospital, and the police are there to question Haley and Lynette. Lynette is talking to one of the cops, and Chief Hawthorne is interviewing Haley. And then Bill comes in, and she's like, oh, baby, I thought I was going to die. What show was it? And I was like, they deserve an Oscar. Oh, that was Willow on General Hospital. Now today, Haley on Beyond the Gates deserves an Oscar because, bro, she was dragging it. And Bill kind of comes in hot, and he's kind of trying to light a fire under the chief's feet to find out who did this to his wife. And she's asking him where was he, and he said he has some business to handle. He did not tell his wife where he was and why he sent her call to voicemail. Ciao. But today was rather funny on Beyond the Gates. I'm missing my girl though. I need me a cat fix. But let me know what you thought about today's episode, and tell me, do you think that Madison was never going to Denmark and she just used this to force Chelsea's hand? Cuz I just don't like the sudden switch up. But I'll see you guys tomorrow for an all new episode of Beyond the Gates. Bye. Hey guys, let's talk Beyond the Gates for today, February 11th, 2026. So today we have Danny at the country club. She's sitting in the lobby waiting for Chelsea and Naomi, and she's talking to Gran on FaceTime, and there she's complimenting her mom on her hair, and Gran says that she is um, enjoying trying different hairstyles. When they get off the phone, Danny goes into the restaurant. She's still waiting for Chelsea and Naomi. And while she's waiting, um, Anastasia and her granddaughter Francesca are at the dining room, and they're eating, and they're talking about how they're going to beat the Duprees, and they are very nasty people. There's nothing nice about either one of them. And when Danny comes into the dining room and she sits, they decide to go over and make snarky comments. And I love Danny because Danny doesn't care who you are, old hag or young child. She is going to give it to you in the best way that she knows how, because she was letting them have it, and she was being classy while doing so. Later, Chelsea and Naomi arrive, and they're talking about Chelsea's impending wedding, and they're talking about, you know, Danny's regrets for possibly, choosing Bill over her career. And Danny is reassuring both of them that, she wanted and she enjoyed being their mother, and she doesn't have any regrets. And Danny also points out that the situation with Madison is not the same situation as it was with her and Bill, because Bill asked her to leave, and she's not asking Madison to do so. And if another opportunity does come for Madison, then Chelsea will be there, right? There, supporting her. And then Wet Blanket, that is Naomi, she's like, marriage is hard. And I understand that, and I don't take away from that. However, like, let your sister be in bliss for a minute. She just got engaged a couple of days ago, and Chelsea's outfit was so cute. I love the stockings. Meanwhile, the two nurses, Ashley and Shanice, are at the nurses station, and they're chatting, and Bill brings in Haley because he thinks that she's showing signs of a concussion. So they take her back to get her checked out. And of course, nothing is wrong with her. And, you know, Ashley talks about how she kind of feels for, you know, Haley, because who would do that to someone? And Haley mentions, when Ashley's giving them the discharge papers, that her and Bill are going to a hotel because the mugger has her address and her license, and he wants to update the security around the house to make sure that they're safe. And then they go back to the hotel and they do what married folks do, and then they start to renew their vows. And I'm like, both of them get on my nerves because Bill's a liar, because you was just beating down Danny's door talking about my wife yesterday. And Haley's a liar because she up there trying to kill you. And I don't know if I want her to succeed or what, because y'all both full of it. Then we had Nicolico and Kyle. They were at work, and eavesdropping. Shanice was over there listening to their whole conversation. And they set up a date for the night. So Nicole said, I'm going to go change, and I'll meet you down at Uptown. So she goes and puts on a skin tight brown number and goes down to Uptown, and they're having drinks, and she's kissing all on Kyle. Because, Nicole is outside and she's living her best life, and I'm not mad at her. She's been married for an X number of years. She's finally single and free. Girl, be single and free. Figure out what this Nicole likes, because the Nicole you were in college when you chose and got with Ted is not the same Nicole that you are today. After you live life, you've been married and divorced, you've experienced a lot. You're not the same person. So I'm all here for Nicole. It's a bit much because, like, Nicole, I kind of see me in the tame Nicole, and kind of see a lot of myself in it, in a tame Nicole, because I'm not like out there. Like, I'm very reserved and kind of, I don't want to say buttoned up because I'm not like, ooh. But I believe in proper etiquette, and I believe in carrying myself a certain way. So yes, it's a bit startling, but she's earned the right to live this life. Live your life, girl. I ain't mad at you. So she's kissing on Kyle, and in comes Carlton, and he is kind of mad because he's feeling some kind of way because we were in your bed and whatever, whatever. And she was like, wait, I thought you understood what this was. Like, if you can't understand, then maybe we need to call this off, or, you need to let me know. And then Kyle comes back over with their drinks and he just leaves. He goes back to the hospital and he's talking to Shanice, and he telling Shanice, about how he's feeling. But Carlton, she told you what it was. She never led you on. Like, let my girl do her. And let me just say, I'm not completely sold on Kyle. Like, so it's not me choosing. Like, I prefer Kyle over Carlton. If I had it my way, Nicole would be with someone else completely, neither one of them. But what I'm saying is, let her live her life. Then we have at the house when Anita gets off the phone with Danny. Grant is trying to get freaky deaky with Grant. Like, he was like, let's go upstairs. And she was like, and he all kissing all on her neck. And it was crazy. Wow. The Grand said, wow. Anyway, so then Samantha, Tyrell, and Jessica come over because Grant has invited them over because, like, we hear um, Francesca say, um, Samantha, Miss, and I don't know why I don't remember Samantha's name. Samantha is my sister. But anyway, Samantha um missed one of the etiquette classes, which we know, like, the time when she was grounded for the whole Nathan thing. So she missed one of the etiquette classes. And so Grant is trying to do cotillion prep. So she had, and Jessica's dad has called and asked that she help Jessica as well. And Jessica gets on my nerves because I understand your view on the cotillion, but either you're going to do it or you're not. And if you're going to do it, you need to participate properly. And that's just how I feel. But Miss Anita, makes me tear up every episode. Like, she is just the matriarch of all matriarchs. But she tells Jessica that that night she's going to be an honorary Dupree and you need to walk and act like it. And I just love that. And I love the work that she's putting in. And I'm glad that Miss Anita is getting to do this because she wanted to. And with the cancer diagnosis, I know it was up in the air to see if she was going to be able to prep them, but she's able to, and it's a good thing because I don't know that Nicole is necessarily up to it because family things don't seem to be Nicole's thing. Now that's the only thing. Like, I'm all for Nicole living her life, like, do that, but you have other priorities and things too, and you are letting them fall through the cracks because you should be with your granddaughter. But I digress. But this was a pretty decent episode. Let me know in the comments what you think, and I will be back tomorrow to discuss the episode. Bye. Let's talk Beyond the Gates for today, February 12th, 2026. So we start today's episode down at Joey's casino with Leslie and Joey, and they're pretty much talking shop, I guess. And then the conversation turns to Leslie trying to get information about Malone. First, she's asking him what Malone did prior to becoming a police officer, and then she's asking him about Malone's wife. What is Leslie's obsession with people's spouses? Because it's getting quite sick. And then she complains about people not treating her well, but then she does things like that. Why would anyone treat you well, Leslie? Because you're not someone that garners respect, and you're always doing something, and you're always out to get someone. Malone's wife isn't bothering you. Why are you bothering her? What y'all think Leslie up to? Meanwhile, at the country club, Nicole is meeting with Vanessa, and Vanessa is talking to Nicole about Carlton and Valentine's Day, because Nicole was making the comment that Heart Attached must be busy because of Valentine's Day, and she said that it is their Christmas. But then she asked her, if Carlton has something romantic planned, and Nicole's like, "Girl, he probably don't want to do nothing with me because he done seen me kissing Kyle," and so they're like, "Girl, what?" And they are having a nice little girl chat, and she's telling Vanessa all about Kyle and what happened between them, and then she um asks Vanessa if she should feel bad, for how Carlton feels, and then um Vanessa asked her, like, what do you want from Carlton, Kyle, or whoever? And she's like, she just wants to feel desired, and she doesn't. Nicole's not looking for her next husband. She's just trying to enjoy the newfound her. And Vanessa tells her that no, then you shouldn't feel bad. You told him what it was before, and that's up to him, to deal with. And then she was like, "You don't think I'm a hoe for?" And I'm not paraphrasing. That's her exact words. You don't think I'm a hoe for messing with two men? And Vanessa's like, "I would never call my friend that." And yes, because Nicole, you grown. Do what you got to do. You grown. You raised your kids. You got all your degrees on the wall. Do what you do, sis. You was you were being the nice, good, faithful wife when you were married to Ted, and he was out there being a hoe. So like, what you doing now? That ain't got nothing to do with nobody. And then we later see that Nicole goes to Ted, and she tells him as much. Don't worry about what I'm wearing. Don't worry about who I'm doing and what I'm doing with them. Don't worry about none of that. And then we can be cool and be friends for our kids and grandkids. And he's like, "Oh, yeah, I don't have a problem with that." Okay, Ted. Meanwhile, at the hospital, Carlton is still salty about Nicole from the night before. So he's being so mean and so nasty to Shanice. Like, you mad at Nicole. Why are you taking it out on Shanice? And so while he's getting testy with Shanice, um, Ted walks up and he overhears, and he's like, "Wait a minute." And so then he was like, "Just because you dating Shanice doesn't mean," and Ted's like, "Wait, don't you finish that sentence and let me holler at you for a minute." So they go over And he basically tells him that he in a funk because of something going on with him and Nicole. And Ted ain't trying to hear it because that ain't got nothing to do with me. What you and her got going on, I'm trying to stay out that woman business. And he is like, I don't want to hear all this, but you can't treat our staff that way. And so then Ted tries to talk to Shanice, and he's trying to ask her if she's due for a break, and she's like, nah, I wore comfortable shoes and I ate already, or something she said. And so then he, gets her to go to his office to talk, and they're talking about the other night, and he's dense and he doesn't get it. And he thinks that she left because of the Leslie and the nasty, dirty, filthy draws. No, it's not because of that. It's because you're still pining after Nicole. And he tries to reassure her that he's not pining after Nicole. And then that's when Nicole knocked on his office to tell him what to do and where to put it. But y'all believe Ted that he ain't worried about Nicole and that he over her and that Shanice is the only woman that he wants to be with? I'm tired of these men lying because I feel like him and another man on another show be lying too. But I digress. Meanwhile, Caroline and Tomas are in Bill's office, and they're talking about like where's Bill and talking about Haley and all of that. Meanwhile, Haley and Bill are waking up at the hotel, and they're at the hotel and they're speaking about their night. And Haley encourages him to go into the office, and he's like, okay, I'll go, but you got to text me every hour on the hour. So as soon as Bill walks out the door, the door ain't even shut all the way. She picks up the phone and she calls Randy, and she tells Randy to come to the hotel and take the service interest and all of that. So he gets there and he sees her eye, and immediately he knows that Haley is in the middle of running a con. And so when he finds out that yes, she is running a con and that con involves Lynette, he loses it because he's like, you can't trust Lynette. Lynette is not someone you can trust, and you keep doing things because you're impatient and you're making mistakes. And while they're talking and going back and forth, and she's defending the things that she's doing, the mistakes that she's making, it comes out that Bill went to the doctor sooner than anticipated. And when he did so, that his levels were off. So Randy is freaking out. And he was like, and on top of that, like, you already dealing with this. And then on top of that, you go and get in a situation with Lynette. And she's like, oh, I want to trust Lynette and all of this. And Randy tells her, and that's your $10 million mistake. Meanwhile, back at the office, Bill is telling Tomas and Caroline about what happened with Haley. And then Caroline gets in trouble because he's like, I know that my wife may want to help, but that's not her job to be the courier. So when he leaves out, she turns on Tomas and is like, you should have sent that back courier, you know better, blah blah blah. And he was like, it was on my desk ready to go, I thought you were setting it up. And then she's like, oh, our wires got crossed. And he said, and Haley took it upon herself to take it to Lynette. And then he was like, you don't find that strange? And Tomas knows that this is all weird. And he also overheard a conversation. He didn't share that with Caroline, with Haley on the phone. And she is taking a special interest, and it is a red flag. But Caroline is so blinded to Haley that it's crazy, and it's going to come back to bite her because Haley ain't no good. Meanwhile, Lynette comes over and basically says, girl, you owe me. And she wants Haley to get Bill to get her charges dropped all together. And then Haley was like, I don't know, I can't do that, but maybe I can get you a hotel room. I think she still wants the hotel room, and she still wants the him to get the charges to go away. But while they're talking, in comes Bill, and he's like, Lynette, what are you doing here? Child, is getting sticky in Fairmount Crest, but I'll see y'all tomorrow to close out the week. Bye. Happy day before the Valentine's Day. Let's talk Beyond the Gates for today, February 13th, 2026. So, in this episode, we start with Bill, Haley, and Lynette. As we know, Haley and Lynette were in the hotel where Haley and Bill are temporarily staying, and they were chatting, and in walks Bill. And Bill's like, what is Lynette doing here? And Haley is a professional liar, so she's quick on her feet, and she tells Bill that Lynette called her to check on her after the mugging, and that they both uh, allude to um Lynette having a little trauma from the mugging situation, and Bill is kind of no nonsense, and he's like, why is she traumatized when you were the one that were mugged? And she's like, no, I would never try and act like anything that I was going through was anything near what Haley went through. But seeing something, and she's just going on putting on, they are professional liars, this is what they do. So Haley asks, can they get her a room? And Bill goes to get her a room. And while Bill is gone, she's like, oh, basically like, oh, let me see what else I can get out of Bill. I could probably get a house beyond behind the gates. And then she's like, girl, he is not your mark. And, don't talk about Fight Club. They talk about all of that. And Bill walks in and gives her the key, and Lynette leaves. And when Lynette leaves, he was like, I don't think that you need to be hanging out with Lynette, because I know people like her, and she's going to try and milk this for everything we got. And she's, you know, I think Lynette is cool, blah, blah, blah. Haley is running game on Bill, and Bill is still blind. And at this point, Bill got to have a death wish, because Danny starts making her announcement, and he has Google alerts on for Danny, and he gets the Google alerts. He watches the whole thing. He watches it, and then he goes on this tangent about how he's glad to see Danny getting back to what she loved, and this is reminding him of when he first met Danny, and he's just going on Danny, Danny, Danny. And then Haley's like, oh, I like the part where she talked about her new husband, and he was like, yeah, yeah, but Danny, Danny, Danny. And I couldn't help but laugh, because yeah, Haley really has a death. I mean, excuse me, Bill really has a death wish. He's asking for Haley to kill him, even if she wasn't already trying to kill him for her own nefarious reasons. He would still be asking for her to kill him. I can't help the man. At Danny's house, Pamela is waiting for Danny to come downstairs, so that they can get ready for the press conference that they're having. But Danny comes in, she has her coat on, and she says she got to do something before they do this. So she leaves, and excuse me, she leaves and leaves Pam standing there like. So Pam tries to, smooth things over with Tatum, and then the press comes, and she's trying to entertain and smooth things over until Danny can get back. Danny runs over to her parents' house, and she just wants to know, get their blessing, because, her going back to modeling is going to kind of put them back in the spotlight, with everything that her mom is going on. She wants to make sure that she has her mom's blessing to do this. And of course, her parents are like completely on board. And they're like, oh, you don't even need to ask, of course. So she comes in and she's on the whirlwind and she's there and Danny and all her Danniness. And it's going very well. But there's this one member of the press who is trying to get Danny to come out of her character. However, Danny pivoted and landed on her feet because, yes, Danny, he tried to say, you're old and washed. So, how you think that's going to feel, which is kind of crazy because he's trying to say that, this is not the same day and time as when Danny was a model before. However, your way of thinking is not the current way of thinking because in this climate, no one would say that to a woman. Like, it, but Danny got him together, like my grandmother would say, and she shut it all down and showed, you know, why she's the perfect person to be in the forefront for this specific line. Meanwhile, my boo cat was over there at her grandparents' house all along, and she and Gran are talking about cotillion talk for Samantha, Jessica, and Tyrell. And so they're discussing that, and Kat's like, I'm on hand, if you have a bad day or if you need anything else, she's being the granddaughter that she is, and she's there when her aunt comes and she's excited for her aunt, and then she is there when her mother comes, but she cuts her mom off, which was funny to me because they needed to watch Danny's press conference and everybody was so happy about Danny. And then Nicole want to talk about, what's been going on at the hospital. But Kat ain't trying to hear about Nicole's drama filled love life. So she excuses herself. And when she does, Gran was like, I see something off about you because he's very perceptive. And I like that about Vernon. Vernon keeps his eyes on all his girls. And I love that. And he's talking to Kat, and Kat's like, everybody's making such big changes, but I feel like I'm playing it safe. And he's like, you don't need to rush anything. And I love the conversation between Kat and her grandfather because I just feel like if I had a critique of Beyond the Gates, I feel like Kat's parents aren't as supportive as they should be, and they don't see Kat and they don't like nurture her the way they say she's their miracle baby, but it doesn't give miracle baby. But the way that Vernon sat and he listened and he talked and he encouraged, it was nice. And then Gran was like, okay, Nicole, what you coming here for? And Nicole, because earlier we see Nicole's in her office and Carlton comes by and he's asking her about a patient. And she's like, I'm glad to see things are good with us. And while they're talking, the chief comes in and she is saying something to Nicole. And then he just jumps all over the chief. I'm like, Carlton, calm down because you getting beside yourself. The chief is a little cutie too. But he is all beside himself, and the him and the chief are going back and forth. And then she was like, "Well, Nicole, maybe you can talk some sense into him because I hear you got away with him." And she's like, "Did she just insinuate?" And he was like, "Well, it was bound to get around. That's why you don't date where you work, Nicole. You should. Well, I mean, you should know this." But anyway, so the chief is walking around the floor today. She see, okay, Nicole and Carlton going on. Then it's Shanice and Ted. And then Nicole is there talking to Shanice while her ex-husband is giving him. It's so messy. And the chief looking like, okay, I'm about to nip all of this in the bud. So it might be some policy changes. I mean, and I get it because she said something about, if all of this starts to affect patient care, then that's when I have a problem. And the way Colton has been behaving as of late, it's quite possible that this could cause some patient care issues. So I definitely understand if Leah need to get a hold on it and put some policies in place because these doctors and nurses is running wild in her hospital. You know I love me a lady chief. But I'm looking forward to next week on Beyond the Gates. Let me know what you thought about today's episode and this week's episode. The episodes from this week, and I'll be back for a fresh week next week.